back, everybody, to the Real Ethereal Show. I am Laura Boone, your hostess, and I have Ursula Lentini back today. I'm so happy you're here, Ursula. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. So I'm really excited about this show today. And Ursula actually came up with this show topic because we were talking about the Enneagram, and I actually did a show with Ursula on her number, which is 5. So she started learning about the Enneagram, and she immediately started matching some of her disciplines in family systems and chakra work in conjunction with psychological and subconscious healing to Enneagram work. So it's just a natural show for us. Before I get started, though, let me kind of plug Ursula for a second. She's an amazing healer. I have been to her and had some healing work done. She's a pranic healer. She is an ordained minister, and she's devoted a lot of her life to subconscious healing and all types of subconscious work through meditation, with individual sessions, all of the above. If you want to see her, actually, you can do it over Skype.
Yeah, I work with people all over the world in Skype sessions or online sessions.
Right. So a lot of our viewers, I know, are not even in Atlanta, Georgia. That's okay. Go to UrsulaLentini.com. That's UrsulaLentini.com. UrsulaLentini.com, and you can figure out how to get a session with her. It's amazing. I've done it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank
you. Because you're very talented.
Thank you.
So today, the reason she's here, I have, if this is your first show that you've seen about the Enneagram, I do shows on lots of things, astrology, the Enneagram, crystals, a whole lot of disciplines, but I'm in love with the healing and the knowledge that the Enneagram can bring to folks. There are lots of resources, but if you're just getting started and if this is your first exposure to the Enneagram, please go to the EnneagramInstitute.com, and Jesse's going to put that website address on the screen for you. But that's a great starting place for you to understand what your number is, because you're going to watch the show and you're going to hear about a few numbers and you're going to be like, what's my number? What's my husband's number? What's my child's number? So you can take a test online. It's not that difficult. There's actually free tests, although I would recommend there's a $12 test that's very in-depth that can really, that's what you ended up doing.
Now I kind of second guess if it's $12, but whatever it was worth it. It was worth it.
Right. It's a more in-depth questionnaire. Okay, so today we're going to talk about an aspect of the Enneagram types, and there are 9 types. And if you want to know about these types, go back to my shows on my website, lauraboone.org, and you can see all the Enneagram shows they're all grouped together to make it easy for you to binge watch Enneagram shows, right? Okay, but today we're going to talk about childhood patterns with Enneagram numbers. What does that mean? Every number has its origin. How did, and it's definitely just like in psychology, they say nature versus nurture. So I think people are, born like they're born, but then their environment, their family of origin starts to mold them and form their ways of protecting themselves, their ways of having their identity in the world. And, before you know it, you're just behaving in a way that you're not even conscious of, and it's just how you were raised. And the Enneagram really describes 9 of these real distinct personality types that you can bring your individual selves to. So no person is like another person. But there are definite themes of behavior. There are definite themes of disintegration or unhealthiness, and as well as health and gifts that each of these types can bring. So there's so much we can talk about here, Ursula, but we're going to pick a few of these numbers and get into the childhood patterns of how these numbers came to be. The first one that I wanted to talk about today is number 3, And they all have nicknames. 3 is nicknamed the Achiever. And so the Achiever, and I'm not going to go into all the details of what a number is, and I have a whole show on 3, you guys. But just in brief, how does a child become the golden child? That's another nickname for it. The golden child, the one that does everything right. The childhood pattern in terms of parenting, these children were not valued for themselves, and they got validation through their achievements. They were taught early on that what they did brought them love and got their needs met. If they did something really well, then they got their needs met. A lot of these folks carry their parents' identity. A lot of parents, when you see the parents on the ball field, and they're living their identity through the child and the child's performance. Okay, the child that steps into that role in a family system is 99% of the time exhibits 3 behaviors. This is the child that is pegged early on to carry on the family name, the family brand. And these children typically, they're older children a lot of times. They're the child, they typically were born
Firstborn.
The firstborn, and or, the one that is the most beautiful or the most talented in sports, or whatever that family system values. It could be the smartest, it could be the prettiest, it could be the best in sports. It doesn't matter. It's whatever brand is put on a child that literally has nothing to do with who they actually are. They felt like they were never validated for themselves. They were only validated for their achievements. Every number has a basic fear. The 3's basic fear is of being worthless without a value beyond their achievements.
Yeah.
Alrighty, Ursula.
I've worked with many people, and you just described it, so it's like, well, of course. So this is the person, what that child looks like is the CEO, the president of their own company, the guy that's got all the cars, all the boats, all the toys, the airplanes, like he's like the top of the hill. He has made it to the top. The typical one is the businessman. So let me just kind
or woman.
Right, but the ones I come across are the man, because it's like the hard achiever. So, and for me, it's more heartbreaking as the woman, because I know our female dynamics and where our power is. And it's not in the corporate world, but if it is, it's done in a masculine way. The one that I would love to see the most is the female who goes to the top with her female power. So, all right, let's just break it down. The child here is a normal little kid. But the parents are so materialistically driven, or prestige or recognition. People in the South, I've noticed, because I'm a Yankee from Detroit. So when I came to live in Atlanta, I noticed that there's a big push for make it look good. As long as we look good, everything's good. So this is another family influence on that child. If you look good, if you sit proper, if you have all your clothes in order, if you are polite to your elders, if you get good grades, if you're the top person in your sport, then everything's okay. It doesn't matter that you have panic attacks or that you have all these things in the background. Just don't let anybody see them. And as long as you look good, we look good, and then you're safe.
Right.
We won't attack you.
Or even if it's not attacking, you get your needs met. You get your reward at that point. And a lot of these children, 3s, are known for separating their feelings and emotions from their identity.
Yes.
So 3s...
There's 2 people going on.
Yeah.
There's the person in the world that they have to be. And when you go down to the deep subconscious, it's our human nature is we need other people. It's our animalistic nature. We are a herd. person.
Yes.
We're a herd
Social
mentality,
creatures.
social creatures. So if you look in the animal kingdom and there's a group of gazelles and one wanders off, that one is going to be lunch meat. There's no safety in isolation. But in numbers, someone says, "Oh, there's a lion over there," and they all go and they all run together, and the lion can't go and chase the group, but he can easily chase the one. So our human reptilian brain says, "Don't be rejected by the group. You could die."
Mm-hmm.
So as a child, we're real close to earth, we're real close to spirit. So we don't know, like, oh, if I say no to my dad, I'm not going to die. But our energy is like, this is dangerous, make sure you stay accepted.
Mm-hmm.
So in the super deep subconscious, as a child who's not aware of all these social structures, they're tracking. We track when we're little kids because we're like, whoa, what's this life all about? Who are these people? How do I need to behave in order to get my needs met?
Right.
So that number 3, they don't really consider their needs after a few years because they start realizing my needs don't count.
Well, my needs, or just in a lot of these processes are about survival and getting your needs. So they figure out, how do I get my needs
That's
met
right.
in this particular system?
Right.
And a 3's particular system
Make everybody else happy
gives-
or proud.
Well, a 3's system gives rewards for achievements,
Yeah.
especially to this particular child. And they may treat the other children differently. But a 3 is taught, I can get what I want and what I need by achieving, not by just being myself and asking.
Right.
Okay? And they're not mirrored properly. And we'll get into that with some of the other numbers. And that's, this is all the unhealthy disintegrated. Okay? The healthy childhood patterns for a 3, like let's say they were in a more healthy family. There's nothing wrong with women or men becoming corporate leaders and achieving and trying to be excellent. 3's teach us how to be excellent. They teach us that if you study, if you are driven, you can achieve, you can climb that mountain. And so that's really great if it's healthy. And if their emotions are in authenticity, are incorporated in that journey.
And honored. So the kid, back to the disintegrated version.
Yes.
Mommy doesn't like it when you. So if that kid, like if your listener is like, I think I'm a 3.
Yes.
If you heard, mommy will be happy when you, or make sure, or you get good grades.
Or
so
you're
Daddy,
a Smith. This is how Smiths
yes.
are. In this community, our name is very well known. Mm-hmm. And this is what our family is like in this community.
Of you to behave in a certain manner.
Right.
So then when that person says, okay, my emotions, maybe not my needs, but my emotions are not a part of the equation in this setup.
Right.
So they'll disassociate from their emotions, their emotional needs. They'll
and achieve.
They'll hit midlife crisis and go, who am I?
Right.
Because they've been so busy framing and look at the perfect world I've created, and then realize they don't know who they are. The other,
they're out of touch with their emotions.
Total.
Yeah.
Clueless.
3's are out of
sometimes.
touch with their emotions. Mm-hmm.
And then the other piece on this one, on the disintegrated version, is they unfortunately have a fraud factor going on. So they'll be in success.
Okay, she's bringing up a really big point about 3's, and that is, in order to survive and keep this up, they can't be honest,
right,
about how they feel, or sometimes just honest in general.
That's right.
It's hard for them.
Yeah. So
because they've set up this paradigm where that makes it difficult to do so. We have compassion for all of these numbers. They're all acting out in the only way they know how at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you brought up a great point.
The person who is having the fraud factor issue is they say, I feel like, worthless. You had mentioned that in your notes. So you can look in their office walls and see all of the awards and everything there. But you're saying, but how could you feel like that? Look, you actually did do these things, and you actually do have the nice house and the wife and the kids, or you actually do have, the success in the 3 homes or whatever that is. And they say, yeah, I know, but I still inside don't feel that I am all of those things. So it's a new conversation for them to actually admit it, because the fear, when you're talking about fears, is that somebody's going to find out
Yeah.
that they're not really everything that they've actually proven to be.
Absolutely right. That's one of their biggest fears. And you hit it. Yeah, there you go. You're a family systems expert. Exactly. And that's what the Enneagram says. The other thing that 3s do, and then I got to move. See, we could do a show
sorry.
on.
I know.
No,
Yeah,
don't apologize.
Okay.
We could literally do a show on every number's childhood.
Probably.
The other thing I want to say is they're also the workaholics. They also separate from their physical needs, not only their emotional, but their physical needs. So they work themselves to death. They're
driven.
The workaholics.
They're driven.
They don't matter. The goal matters. Okay, so sometimes there's a self-care issue. Awesome. So the way out with a 3 is slowing down and honoring their emotions. Slowing down and having a partner, friend, parent, therapist, whatever positive influence you have in your life is mirror back to you or give you a safe space to emote and understand your own authenticity and then mirror back the value of that. That's a big way out. Would you not agree?
Yes.
Okay. All right. We're going to move on.
This is so interesting.
Well, what I find interesting and why we're doing the show is that you do this for a living, helping with family systems, and it's all just at a high level. The path to healing is in the Enneagram. I mean, it gives you indications.
To know thyself almost, in a way.
Because you got to start there.
Yeah.
And then there's a lot of work after that. But just to become conscious, wait a minute, I am in this trance. They say all these numbers are somewhat of a trance.
Oh.
So, if you're in the 3 trance, then this is what the story you tell yourself.
Very interesting.
Every number tells itself a story.
When you wake up from the trance, now you have choice.
Exactly. And freedom. And peace because you're being authentic. Okay, let's move on to 4. I'm a 4.
Okay.
So I wanted to bring this one up, but I know about this one, so I can really speak to it. But and I did a whole show on it. But the 4 is the individualist. 4's childhood pattern is they feel like they are not like their parents. They weren't seen by their parents or understood. They have 0 mirroring typically, or inaccurate mirroring. And because of that, they're sort of left to their own devices. They don't see anything they identify with. They start to feel like when they're not like everybody else, something's wrong with me. They get this inherent, I'm flawed. Something's wrong with me. 4s strike out on a search for identity. So these are the folks that try on different identities. They try to be like XYZ. They may switch identities over their lifetimes. Who am I? Who am I? Who am I? They also, because they feel like they're inherently flawed and not good enough, they compare themselves to others and they go, I'm not good enough. So they get very inert at times. They self-destruct. They turn this way. They can have problems with addiction. They're one of the numbers that are really prone to addiction, but it's not addiction in terms of pleasure or seeking pleasure. It's addiction a lot of times in terms of self-destruction. Okay. So it's more of a self-destructive pattern. And the trance that a 4 gets in it can be very negative. Like they at times cling, it's that person who, it's like Eeyore. I love Winnie the Pooh. I love the Enneagram type the Winnie the Pooh characters. Eeyore was a 4. They can be very, I can't, I'm not good at that anyway. I can't do that. Or, and what happens to a 4 is they look up and they've been so, depressed or medicating or focusing on, in their daydreams. Fours disassociate and go off into their heads because they were sort of left alone as a child, and so they just sort of floated away, and no one noticed because no one noticed them.
Watching, yeah.
So, yeah, they start to truly disassociate and float off. So, yeah, 4s are typically not the achievers, not the showy ones, if they're not integrated. When they start to integrate, they become creators. They're typically the creative types because they go inside and they're constantly looking for, checking their feelings constantly because they grew up in isolation. So what they're able to do when they integrate is they understand the richness of an inner world, the inner world of emotions. So a lot of 4s, when they become actualized, can really pull a lot of just that lovely humanity that's universal. They take their own experience and they make it universal.
Beautiful.
And through art, typically. So a lot of famous artists are 4s. What do you think about that childhood pattern? Have you seen that in your work?
Yes, it's very interesting because it's a profile almost.
Yeah.
So I can
These
see.
are like profiles.
Yeah, I can see that. In my languaging, that would be neglect.
Yes.
So the child is sitting there going, okay, I've got a roof over my head. My mom and dad are paying attention to me. I have my new school shoes for the season. All the needs are check, 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 check. But there's this big empty hole. And they don't know what that is. So the big empty hole is unfulfillment because they're not being properly nurtured.
Yes.
So they're given their things that they need, but they're not nurtured. There's not any emotional, there's not physical, there's not like, sweetheart, how are you doing today? Are you okay? Like none of
mirroring.
That. Yes.
You look like you're bored doing this.
Yeah, none of that.
You look like you're actually really good at that. You seem happy. How are you? What's going on with you?
Exactly. So therefore, and that gives identity. So, oh, mom likes it when I draw this picture. I want to draw more pictures because it's a way of us to communicate and interact. But if mom doesn't care and you're drawing 20 pictures, a week, and you're just like, oh, yeah, she's drawing your pictures, then there's no value. So the child grows up not knowing their value because of the mirroring thing. And the neglect is, it's not that the parents are meaning to neglect. They're coming from a tradition of neglect.
Right.
So we tend to hang out and to marry and to, create a home with the people that are like us because there's less conflict. Everything's pretty much agreed upon. So the neglect person marries the neglect person and they raise a child thinking, well, we made it through. They'll make it through, and that's just the way it is. And we're out making sure that all the needs are being met. So the child is like, boy, I would sure like some time and attention instead of these presents out of guilt that you're giving me because you're not at home. But when a child is left with so much time on their own, then they have to have a creative imagination. But the thing is, they have that black hole of emptiness, unfulfillment, disconnection. So then they assume, and it's amazing because children from their cribs will be assessing the situation and understanding, like at 2 and 3 years old, they'll be saying, I know you're not in a crib at 3, but they'll be saying, oh, so this is happening and this is happening, therefore I'm not worth attention.
Well, there's that, Ursula, and then I think the other thing about a 4 that's really important, that it is a form of neglect, but it's subtle, and I'll tell you what I think it is.
I know, it's subtle.
It is when they talk about a child that looks around and doesn't see anybody that they resemble. Like they don't see anything that they like that's going on in the family. They don't see anything.
I was born into the wrong family, is I think a 4.
Exactly.
I must be from another planet.
Yes. And that, by the way, that wound is not necessarily at times like anything that anybody's doing wrong either. Like that's not even neglect, but it's like the kind of, I mean, how high frequency, or especially, back in the older days, right, before there was a lot of knowledge about psychology, parents, they talk about you have to parent every child differently.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people just don't understand that.
Mm-hmm.
So what really worked for my brother or my sister wasn't what worked for me, or the environment, another child might fit really well into that environment.
Mm-hmm.
But a 4 typically is the one that didn't. So it's the, I've always felt, and I think I've read this in the 4, that I'm sort of, especially when I was younger, not so much now, but I always felt like I was on the fringe. I was never really like everybody else. And that had to do with my family of origin.
Sure.
So there's a mirroring like that too, where you're constantly, there's a wound there that was very unintentional.
Yes.
I think by the parents.
And everybody kind of looks around at the family, within the family, and then outside the family, and you're like, oh, everything's fine. The parents are for sure everything's fine, because the child is they're not very expressive, so they're not going to scream and yell and cause a lot of attention, because they've already decided early on, I don't count, I don't matter, I shouldn't be here, I don't belong in this family, I'm probably adopted, people are just including me to be nice, I don't really count in this dynamic. So with the addiction, you were saying, I was saying that black hole, they have this black hole of disconnection and wondering what their value or purpose is in the family, because it doesn't seem like they matter. No matter what they do or don't do, it's just like whatever.
Well, for me too, and I think a lot of 4s are like this, and it wasn't like my whole childhood was miserable, but a lot, there were a lot of things that we did, and it was like, we're supposed to like this.
Mm-hmm.
Or we're supposed to feel like you fit in here. And I didn't like it, and I didn't feel like I fit in. Which can be a real pain in the to the parents.
Mm-hmm.
I was that child.
Never happy.
Yeah. I mean, and it wasn't me.
Mm-hmm.
And I just remember wanting to be, I want to be in that family, because they go and do things that I want to do,
Mm-hmm.
And it takes a very, I don't know, actualized parent,
Yes.
to not take that personally.
And to recognize the needs of this number 4 child, which are
Exactly.
very vague, really.
Very vague, yeah. So, yeah, it's a interesting dynamic, and again, every number has a way out,
Mm-hmm.
and 4s really, and this has really helped me. 4s really need to take principled action. They need to go to 1. So they get very addicted to their emotions and to the loop. They wallow.
Because that's all they have.
Exactly.
That's only their only reference. Because that's the only real thing anymore.
Right.
So that's why they'll do drugs, because it's a stimulation of, oh, I'm alive.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm feeling something. Oh, I'm having an experience. Because that childhood of the 4, of the neglect. And, we say the word neglect in America, and it means, they weren't bathed and
They didn't have food. Yeah.
Right? But that's not the neglect. The neglect is the emotional neglect, the interaction, valuing. Again, it's valuing, because we really do decide our value based on our feedback.
As a child, we do.
Yeah.
Isn't that amazing?
Yes.
Which all this comes down to that. Every single number, every single childhood, every single personality that's formed has had some sort of conditioning about how they are valued or not.
See? That's interesting.
So that's what we're trying, and so each of us, our work, right, wouldn't you agree, is to figure out what was the pattern that we grew up with, and how do we break free of that trance?
It's the belief, right? So you have a condition. You're explaining these situations that cause that reality, and it's almost like, were you born into a 4 or were you nurtured into a 4?
Probably a little of both.
Mm-hmm. So then there's the condition, If every parent just said, you're a child of God, you're an angel, you're meant to be here, whatever you are, I totally accept you. If you make mistakes, I totally love you. You are a fascinating being. We'd all be a lot better. But that's not the messaging, because, like you said, the parent doesn't have that clarity about themselves being so.
Yeah, well, the parent grew up in their system.
Right.
They're wounded. I mean,
Yeah.
this isn't about all the parents are wrong.
No, it's just the whole generation, and based on culture and who went through the war, and the generations that were starving, and the depression, and so on and so forth. The Holocaust. Generations down, they're still suffering from the conditions that were traumatizing, and then they were taught to that child, to the next one, and the next one. And we really do carry our burdens from one generation to the other.
And it's about being conscious, waking up. And, we were talking before the show, there's so many different ways to heal. There's so many different paths of consciousness. There's a way of the spiritual path, right? Mm-hmm. Everybody has a different way on their own spiritual path. Mm-hmm. And the Enneagram, I do a lot of different shows. We all do different shows. I mean, if you look at the other hosts, and a lot of what we're about here is trying to find your own path, what resonates with you, what language resonates. So the Enneagram is just to me another language. Okay, 4. I love to talk about this number because this number gets the most, gets the most heat, and that is an 8, because they are the lightning rod, if you will, of the Enneagram. The 8 is the challenger. The 8 is the fighter. The 8 is the soldier. The 8 is the one that comes out swinging. And the childhood pattern of the 8 is that they became adults at an early age through a calamity or a loss of a parent. A lot of these folks dealt in dangerous environments. And, you were talking about neglect earlier. 8s did not, maybe neglect is a word you could use, but most 8s weren't dealing with neglect. They were dealing with survival. Yeah. They were in an environment where literally basic physical needs are not being met. A lot of them, grew up in chaotic environments, unstable environments, abusive environments, environments where they were controlled, violated, and their basic fear, by the way, is being controlled or violated. Okay, so, and these folks, it's nature and nurture. These are people that had to make a choice really early on if they were going to become a victim or if they were going to fight back. And a lot of these kids turned into, they're cooking for their brothers and sisters. They're
at 8 years old.
Yeah, they're out, selling drugs so that they can make the rent so that they don't get thrown out of their apartment. They run away from home because they were being abused so terribly. They're like, you know what? I'll just do it on my own. So they leave. A lot of what their trance is in their life is that they have to control everything, that no place is safe, that they have to fight, start the fight before the fight. They bring the fight before it comes to them.
Yep, it's a defensive posture to begin with.
Yeah. So don't mess
with me. I know you're about to mess with me, so let me tell you, that you don't have a chance because I'm going to, protect myself. They're really protecting themselves to come out fighting. So yes, this is a very heartbreaking personality type for me to experience, because you just want to say to the universe, come on, you got to give them a chance. Like so many odds are against them. And my constant observation as I go into the subconscious with my clients is how amazingly adaptive we are as human beings, that we can survive these crazy, these difficult, these traumatic beginnings.
Well, and 8s are always the story where you're like, how did they survive that? And a lot of 8s, I know some friends of mine, women that, are eights that, were buying food and appliances for the family when they were small children that run these big corporations. I mean,
Yeah.
and you just look at it and you're like, how did you get from there to there? Typically, when you're saying something like that, it's an eight.
Mm-hmm. I can see that.
So they have this strength of will.
Incredible. That's how they survived.
Survived.
So the typical scenario is one of the parents are using, and alcohol has a lot of fire in it. You mentioned the word fire in the beginning. Mm-hmm. So when a parent is under the influence, let's just say that, they're not present. So you say the loss of a parent, it doesn't have to be death. So if the loss of the parent is in the world of addiction, they're not there. Instead, you have this monster that is unpredictable. So when there's...
Or they're abandoned completely.
Yeah.
Or they're abandoned in their own home because the parent is so medicated they're not there.
MIA, they're missing it, in action. Sometimes it could be that the father could be a successful household because that scenario is the impoverished family. Mm-hmm. But this can also happen where the father's a doctor and they're never home, or they own their own company and they're always traveling, and then the mother wants to go to that kind of guy because he gives her stability and so on, because she's not stable. So now the stable person is out of the house and the unstable person is raising the children. Mm-hmm. So when mom's cray-cray, basically, I mean...
An eight emerges.
Yes.
It's the child that emerges and says, somebody's got to take care of things around here.
Right.
Somebody's got to lead.
Right. And that, like I said, again, that's the typical addict, the child of the addict. Parent 1 and parent 2 aren't involved and aren't here. Who's going to take care of it? Well, I guess that has to be me. So that child, early, 4, 5, 6 years old, is like, okay, forget being a child, forget playing, forget imagination. We have to eat, and I have to take care of my siblings, and I have to get myself to school, and Mom, you're late for work, get going. And she's got the hangover, and she's still trying to put her face on, and that everything is intense and everything is important. There's no relaxing for this 8. Like, they don't know how to relax.
Right. There's anxiety, there's fear, and there's also this, it's a fight or flight state. Actually, and they lean into the fight state constantly. And we've all met these folks, they're the people that come in the room and everybody's like having a great time or a meeting, and all of a sudden they come in and they just bring this big energy that's sort of like, okay, here's how it's going to go. Mm-hmm. And it can be negative at times. They have no idea, nor do they care what anybody thinks about what they do. They do not feel safe in the world.
But they will also create safety because they've been doing it for themselves and for the people that they're protecting. They are highly reliable. So they're excellent business people, and they're excellent negotiators because they can see a situation and say, okay, this is what needs to happen.
Yeah.
And it'll get done in a second, and you'll just be like, incredible. And it's nothing to them what they just did because they've been living on the edge many years of their life, and then so they get out of the house and they're in a place of their own becoming. They're safe, they're this, they're that, but they've been on such a track that they're not gonna put it in first gear and mosey along.
Right.
That's the way they are now, so might as well make the best of it. They're efficient, they're creative as far as resourcing, and they're very powerful, fascinating people.
The path out for 8, and we've talked about this in some of our integration and disintegration episodes, and actually the 8 episode, is that they need to trust in some safe spaces in their life and be vulnerable in those spaces. The key to 8s actualizing is being vulnerable. If they have that foundation, if they start to let themselves have that resting place and that place where they can actually feel connected with others, you're right, they become the best leaders. I mean, they become, and again, we talk about what's the gift every number brings. Well, the gift that the 8 brings is how to be a hero. They become the hero, they become the leader, They become the one that everybody can't believe how strong they are, because typically, it's the nature nurture thing. When the calamities happening in a household, not in every household an 8 does not emerge. But it's the nature. If it's a strong person who has a strength in them, they might emerge to become an 8, and they need to know the trance they're in, so they can, again, what you say earlier, I loved it. When you become conscious, you have choice, then you have freedom.
So the 8 person, if you really, when you dive in, their integrity level is very high, because they say, this isn't right. And they have a passion about making things right.
Yep.
So after the survival mode, now they have to figure out, again, with the efficiency, how can I get all these things that need to get done, because I need to be taken care of, or my siblings need to be taken care of, or the house needs it, or mom needs to get to work so we can make sure that she's making the money for this. So they're like back thinking and forward thinking at the same time. And when they become self-actualized and integrated, and they're kind of in touch, they'll be very, their gut instinct, they will trust that, because that has gotten them in and out of trouble. And they know, like, okay, I need to listen to this, because this is the way we need to do that when the police are knocking at the door. Follow my gut and let me figure things out, and let me say the right things to calm everything down. So when they're in leadership, and they're almost coming from a humanity point of view, because they know their own internal suffering that's happened along the way, and they don't want anyone else to suffer in that same manner.
Correct.
So they'll lead.
You just said it. They once they let themselves be vulnerable and they get in touch with their emotions, then they're able to protect and be the hero for others in their emotions.
Exactly.
They become the hero. And unlike 4s we just talked about, who swim too much in their emotions, 8s are more in their actions. They're more in activity.
Yes.
Like, I've got to do something.
Yes.
I can't look at... I'm in survival mode. I can't feel any. I don't have time to feel. My adrenaline's going. I've got to just do. They need to slow down and feel, and then they find that balance. So see how all of these, we're going to have to close, because, oh my gosh, Ursula, we could talk.
I know.
We have 6 more numbers. I knew we wouldn't be able to get to all of them today, but it really is, everybody has their own, trance that's very individual to them and their number. There's different ways out for everyone. A prescription for an 8 is different than a prescription for a 4.
Yeah, but that chaos environment, they get to a place of safety, but their system is so used to chaos that when it's too calm, something's not right. Because it's usually turbulence, and if there's a quiet, like when a parent's in the kitchen and the kids are playing, and then all of a sudden it's too quiet, they just drop what they're doing and go in there, and like one kid's choking it's getting crazy, it's getting rough, it's getting out of
Something's
control.
wrong.
So the silence is like,
they're in, trauma. It's like PTSD.
yeah,
Literally.
Because after a silence in a chaotic house, if it's chaos, and there's silence, the next thing is a big explosion.
Right.
So silence in the longer term of number 8, chaos in their childhood, they've created...
It's hard for them to be peaceful and still.
It's nerve-wracking.
Nerve-wracking.
So they will create more chaos just so they can feel
That's so
normal.
True. That's so true. And I've been close to some 8s. You just nailed that. Well, you nailed a lot of things.
Because the system is so accurate. And I can see it. When you say something, I'm like thinking of different clients that I've worked with and saying, oh.
Will you come back again so we can do the rest of these numbers?
This is fascinating to me.
I can't wait. Thank you.
Thank you.
I hope this helped somebody out there. And again, go to the EnneagramInstitute.com and look up your number. Take the test so that you can understand, what your childhood pattern was and how you can break free of the trance, right? Which is your life's work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Come back again.